Right, welcome back to another video on the little gorgeous R7 over here. So what are we doing today? Well, what we're doing today is switching from this fork oil, Motul 10 weight, to this fork oil, a Motor X 10 weight. And you're going to say, why the hell would you want to do that? Well, if you didn't see one of my previous videos, you would not have seen this table. And the reason I want to do it is because with this fork oil in, I'm right at the end of the rebound adjustment. I've got nowhere to go if I want to even add more rebound at any point. Let's say the fork oil gets hot, right? And I want to slow it down again. I've got nowhere to go with the adjustment. So I needed a thicker oil than this even. So if we look at my table here, this is where we were at now with the viscosity level at 36. And this Motor X, still a 10 weight, the specification of this Motor X is even thicker. And that just seemed to be the best middle ground for me. The Motul 10 weight is here, the Motor X 10 weight is here. And it was the best options for me all around. And it's also got the best index, which means it can withstand heat better. So that's why we're doing it, that's why we're going with this. I'm going to be trying to be a little bit more technical when I'm doing this one, in that I want to measure the oil height with the springs out of the forks. Last time when I did this, I just dumped the oil out without removing springs and poured in a quantity from the manual. This time I actually want to try and measure the air gap that this creates. So stick around and we will get on with this. Okay, we've got the wheel out and various things, and I just wanted to do a quick reminder to make sure that if you're doing this, that you take off the preload settings after you've recorded where they are, count the rings, etc. Wind those all the way up to take the pressure off the springs inside, and undo the clamp bolt and loosen off, don't completely take it off, but loosen off the top cap before you get the forks out the bike. That just makes life a lot easier. Okay, so we've now got all the bodywork off both sides. The main reason for that is to give us access to the two clamp bolts here on the lower yoke. You can kind of get to these without taking the bodywork off, but you're in danger of rounding out those heads. So I thought I'll kill three birds with one stone. I want to do a bit of a deep clean underneath the hood. It's not that dirty, but I'll just give it a wipe over. I'd also forgotten to lock wire the drain bolt last time I had that undone. So I've done that as well, and helps us to torque up these bolts. So we're nearly there. Everything else is loose at the top, so just need to undo these two and the fork will come out of the bike. Okay, so I'm going to start draining the fork oil out now. So we've got the top cap almost loose on the bike, just past the seal. And I've attached two cable ties this end, which eventually when all the oil is pumped out, is going to hold the fork tube up to this part eventually. I don't know if you can see all this, sorry. But you'll see that in a minute. So I'm just going to pull the cap, start draining the oil. Give it a pump out, and we'll try to see how much oil we've got, just because. I don't know if it'll be important, but if we want to refill with the exact amount and then see what the fork height was, we can do that. So here we go. Grab my things. Right, let's drain this oil. It's not all going in the jug. Never mind. So that's what those two cable ties were for, just to keep the tube up whilst we've got it hanging and draining the last little drips. So I'm just going to repeat the process on the other leg. Yeah. Alright, so we've got both forks drained now. They're just doing the last little drips into their pan. I measured off the quantities that I got out. I think I lost quite a bit of the right hand fluid in my draining procedure, so that's why it's a little bit lower than the than the left. So at least I've got the quantities that I did use, so I'm going to aim for kind of the middle of that, those 2 points, fill each fork up and see if I can measure the oil height. That is going to involve removing the top caps, this spacer, and getting the springs out, and I don't know if I've got all the tools to do that, but I'm going to do a little bit of research and see what I've got. Joining me today on today's workshop activity is Oliver again, and this time he's live streaming to me on Minecraft. What are you doing, Oliver?
Well, I just built my new pretty, well, okay, maybe not pretty, but a secret bunker.
Secret bunker, cool. Yeah.
I got these nice protected windows, a nice gray bed, and in this ender chest I got all of my loot.
Oh, that's amazing. Loves it, loves it. So you're building...
And now I'm just breaking the glass because I'm a neighbor.
Alright. Well, you're going to say hi to all my followers and subscribers?
Hello, everyone. I don't know your names.
No. Alright, well, we'll catch up with you later, Oliver. Bye for now.
Bye.
So I did drop the ball a little bit somewhat with regards getting a tool for compressing the springs, which would enable us to get the top caps off and the springs out. So I've ordered one and it should be here tomorrow morning, so we'll pick up this video again in the morning. In the meantime, I'm just going to give a little clean over underneath the fairings on here. Have a look around, make sure nothing's leaking, make sure everything's good. It's a good opportunity for me to take a look and see what's going on whilst we've got the fairings off. Alright, the tool arrived and you can kind of get the idea of what I've done here. Bit of a ghetto garage method of compressing the spring, but it works and you do not have to spend gazillions of dollars to do this. This was like $20 I think for this tool, and it comes with this part. Now before I do take off the top cap, it would appear to be critical, as far as I've read in the service manual, to keep this distance of the nut on that thread exactly the same when we reinstall it. So I am going to measure how far that nut is off the thread so that I can record that for reinstallation. Okay, this is mainly for my reference, but it's 13 millimeters
from the lip of that top rod before the thread to the start of the black top bolt. 13 millimeters.
Okay, so we loosened off this lock nut here, and that allowed me to spin off the top cap. This one. And then with that out, we removed the spacer and then released the compressor tool, and that allowed us to take the spring out. And here we are. So I have improvised a rod puller, because we're going to need to move this up and down to get the fluid, get all the bubbles out of the fluid. This is the little rod that does this is the left fork, so this is the compression leg. So that thing there gets pushed down by your adjuster. It's spring loaded, and that's how the compression adjustment works. So we're going to fill up with the specification of fork oil. We'll read that in the manual again, and then we'll see what the air level is at. There's a specification for quantity and air gap. Air gap is measured with the springs out, and it's basically the distance from this top lid to the level of oil in the middle of the fork. So you can measure that with like a little stick, and then measure the stick, and that's a basic way of doing it. So here's your specification on quantities. The left is 13.52 US ounces. So I have got that marked on my jug as closely as I can. And then, like I say, we can do a secondary check of the air gap level. 171 millimeters it requires, and you measure that like that. Top of the fork to the oil level. So we'll do it both ways, measured quantity, and then check the air gap of this delicious fork oil. Okay, so I've done my air gap test with my little measurement rod here, and very interesting. So as we read, the specification in the manual says 171 millimeters. My gap with the quoted quantity of oil measures this green tape is 171 millimeters from the tip, and the black tape just happens to be 120 millimeters by accident. And when I measure it, that's exactly where I am, 120 millimeters, nowhere near the 170. And yes, I have pumped the damper rod up and down multiple times now, just to be absolutely sure, checking it on a straight and level surface with the outer tube pushed all the way down. So I think, unfortunately, the manual specification for the air gap must be wrong. Now, a good friend has been messaging me about suspension. He'd done another Michael, by the way. Shout out, Michael. He's already done the Andriani cartridges in his forks. He was setting 130 millimeter air gap, and said that our lovely friend Dave Moss, who some of you will have heard of, I'm sure, he ended up doing 120 millimeter air gap as well. And that's what I get with the specification of oil poured in here. So I don't know why it's not manual specification air gap, but 120 is what I'm going to be going with in these forks, and we'll see how we get on with them. So yeah, just that's information for you. Take it or leave it, but 120 mil air gap is what I've got with that quantity of oil, and that's what I'm going to go with for now. Okay, so reassembly. I had to improvise a little bit and get rid of my tie wraps and use a lock wire, otherwise I couldn't get the white plastic spacer to go over my tie wraps. So I had a quick rethink and used some lock wire instead. So now we're going to screw on the we're going to put the locking piece in there, and then screw on the top cap. Okay, so remember, it's very important that we get this distance right again from the top of the threads, from the kind of shoulder of the threads to the black top bolt. otherwise our compression adjustment would be thrown out a little bit. So I'm going to be very careful to check that again. 13 millimeters was my distance from that kind of shoulder at the start of the threads, that straight edge, up to the black straight edge. So I'm going to measure that and lock it off at 13 millimeters. Okay, so the top cap is in place. Just so you can see how this works, the preload adjuster, the orange brassy piece, makes contact with this, and that applies pressure onto the spring spacer, onto the washer there. So make sure that's sat back in nicely, and when we release the tension, this should sit nicely on a little lip on the adjuster there. So make sure that that is true when you release the pressure on the spring. So there you have it. We have changed the fork oil, we've double checked the fork oil height. We could have changed the springs if we want to do for different weight springs, and all with some basic tools in my garage. Well, that's a specialized tool, but it costs like 18-20 bucks. So it just proves what you can do in your own garage with a little bit of mind and thought, and yeah, so be encouraged. You can do these things by yourself. It's not rocket science, and these are fairly basic forks. I was a bit worried, to be honest, because I've never worked on upside down forks, but they are simple in their construction, really. Yes, there's a few techniques to be used, but yeah, nothing too crazy really. So I'm gonna tighten up this one and then move on to our right fork leg. So there we have it. Both forks are back in the bike. Just nipped at the top at the moment. So I'm gonna get on with putting all this back together. But as you can see, the basic maintenance that you can do on these forks, you can do it at home. Sorry about the mess. A ratchet strap and a few basic tools, plus the the spacer grabber tool thing. You can do this at home. Right, I'm going to put all this back together. Well, nearly all back together, because my next video is coming up even on its way.